The huge space station floated in the darkness between 12 different star systems. Far away from any planet or sun, it was a safe place where different alien races could meet without fighting. The station was so big that it looked like a metal city floating in space with bright lights shining from thousands of windows. Ambassador Kehoe stood near a large window watching alien ships arrive from all across the galaxy. Some ships looked like giant crystals that sparkled in the starlight. Others were dark and scary with sharp edges that cut through space like knives. The insect ships buzzed around in swarms, making clicking sounds that could be heard even through the metal walls. Inside the main meeting hall, representatives from 47 different alien species sat around a massive round table. The room was so large that it could hold thousands of beings. The ceiling was made of clear glass, so everyone could see the stars above them. It was meant to remind everyone that they were all part of the same galaxy. The Valari delegation sat on one side of the table. Their bodies were made of living crystal that changed colors when they talked to each other. They whispered in voices that sounded like wind chimes. The light from the room made their skin sparkle like diamonds, but their eyes were cold and calculating. The hive minds were the most frightening beings in the room. They looked like giant insects with too many legs and eyes that never blinked. Their mandibles clicked, together making a sound like breaking bones. When they talked, it was not one voice, but hundreds speaking at the same time in perfect harmony. Even more scary were the cosmic elders who rarely showed themselves to other species. They were beings of pure energy who had lived since the galaxy was young. Today they had taken physical forms that looked like tall shadows with glowing eyes. They floated above their chairs instead of sitting ambassador. So Min led the human delegation. She was a small woman compared to most of the aliens in the room, but she held herself with quiet confidence. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore a dark blue uniform that marked her as a representative of Earth Captain Wu Jin. Sat beside her, he was a military man with scars on his hands from old battles. His uniform was different from So Min, showing that he commanded human warships. His eyes constantly moved around the room, watching for threats. Even in this peaceful place, Dr. Hai Jin was the third human at the table. She was younger than the others and carried a small computer device that contained all her research. She had discovered something terrible in the outer parts of the galaxy, but no one wanted to listen to her. Warnings, Chancellor. Vorthak of the hegemony called the meeting to order. He was a giant reptile creature with scales that looked like armor and teeth that could bite through metal. His voice was deep and scary when he spoke. His people controlled the largest army in the galaxy, and he never let anyone forget it. The meeting began with accusations against the humans. The Valari said that human colonies were expanding too fast into their territory. They claimed that humans were stealing resources that belonged to other species. Their crystal bodies flashed angry red colors as they spoke. The hive minds agreed with the Valari. They said that humans were too aggressive and did not respect the old ways of doing things. Their hundreds of voices spoke as one, saying that young species like humans needed to be controlled before they caused problems. The Trade Federation was worried about money. They said that human businesses were taking customers away from alien companies. They wanted new rules to limit what humans could sell and where they could sell it, Ambassador. So Min tried to speak, but the other aliens would not listen. She wanted to tell them about the real danger that Dr. Hai Jin had discovered in the outer rim of the galaxy. 3 human colonies had already gone silent and more were in danger. But every time she tried to explain, the other species talked over her. Captain Wu Jin felt his anger growing as he watched the alien delegates mock his people. They made jokes about human military power, saying that humans were too weak to defend themselves properly. They laughed at human technology, calling it primitive and useless. Dr. Hai Jin attempted to show her research to the council. She had videos and data from the outer rim colonies that showed something terrible was happening. But the other species refused to look at evidence from such a young and inexperienced race. The situation got worse when Chancellor Vorthak made a proposal. He said that human space should be put under the protection of the hegemony. This meant that his people would control human worlds and make all the important decisions. He said it was for their own good, since humans were too young to govern themselves properly. The other alien species quickly agreed with this idea. They saw a chance to take control of rich human planets and mining operations. The Volari wanted human crystal deposits. The hive minds wanted human agricultural worlds. The Trade Federation wanted to control human shipping routes as the vote proceeded. Ambassador. So-Min realized that the meeting was not really about discussion or negotiation. The alien species had already decided what they wanted to do to humanity. They were just going through the motions to make it look official and legal. The galactic community had grown comfortable with their power. They had been the rulers of space for thousands of years before humans even invented space travel. They saw humans as children who needed to be controlled and guided by their betters. Captain Wu Jin received urgent messages on his communicator, while the aliens continued their debate. The messages were in code, but he understood them perfectly. More human colonies were going silent, while they sat here arguing about politics. The real threat was spreading faster than anyone imagined. The final insult came when the vote was taken. Every alien species except the humans voted to place human space under alien control. They celebrated their victory with sounds of joy and triumph. The Volari crystals flashed bright colors. The hive minds clicked their mandibles in approval. Ambassador. So-Min stood up slowly from her chair. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were hard as steel. Captain Wu Jin and Dr. Hai Jin also stood up. They said nothing to the celebrating aliens. Instead, they turned and walked toward the exit. The other species watched them go with amusement. They thought the humans were acting like children who had lost a game. Chancellor Vorthak made a joke about human emotional instability that made the other delegates laugh even harder, but something about the way the humans left made a few of the older aliens feel uncomfortable. The humans had not shouted, or argued, or begged for mercy. They had simply accepted the decision and walked away with dignity. That was not what the aliens had expected. The cosmic elders watched the humans leave with interest. Their ancient minds remembered other young species who had been dismissed and underestimated. Most of those species had died out or been conquered, but a few had surprised everyone. Those few had changed the galaxy forever as the human delegation disappeared through the exit door. Their footsteps echoing in the corridor, the alien celebrations continued. But deep in space, human ships were already beginning to move in patterns that would soon make the galaxy tremble with fear. The human delegation walked through the long corridors of the space station without saying a single word. Their footsteps made the only sound in the metal hallways. Ambassador. So-Min led the way with her head held high and her back straight. Captain Wu Jin and Dr. Hai Jin followed behind her. Their faces showed no anger or sadness, just cold determination. Other alien delegates had come out of the meeting hall to watch the humans leave. They expected shouting or crying or begging for another chance. Instead, they saw 3 humans walking calmly toward their shuttle bay. The silence was more frightening than any angry words would have been. A group of Volari representatives stood near the elevator. Their crystal bodies were still flashing, with the happy colors of victory. They whispered to each other in their wind chime voices, wondering why the humans were not more upset about losing their independence. The hive mind delegation followed the humans at a distance. Their hundreds of eyes watched every movement. The collective consciousness was puzzled by human behavior. They had expected emotional outbursts, not this quiet acceptance. Ambassador. So-Min pressed the button for the elevator and waited. The 3 humans stood together, saying nothing while aliens gathered around them to stare. Some of the younger alien species had never seen humans act this way before. They had heard that humans were very emotional creatures who could not control their feelings. When the elevator doors opened, the humans stepped inside. Captain Wu Jin turned to face the watching aliens for just a moment. His eyes were like ice, and several of the smaller aliens stepped backward in fear. Then the doors closed, and the humans disappeared inside. The elevator. Captain Wu Jin activated his secure communicator. The device looked like a simple wristwatch, but it could send messages across the entire galaxy in seconds. He spoke just 3 words into the device, but those words would change everything. The message was sent in a code that only humans understood. It went to every human ship and base and colony in known space. Within minutes, human captains and commanders and governors were receiving the same simple instruction. The evacuation protocols that had been prepared in secret for months were now active. On the space station, human workers began leaving their jobs early. They told their alien supervisors that they felt sick or had family emergencies. No one suspected that they were all following the same secret orders. Human shops and restaurants started closing without explanation. The human shuttle bay was busier than it had been in years. Small transport ships that had been sitting unused for months suddenly came to life. Human families who lived on the station packed their belongings quickly. They left behind furniture and decorations but took important documents and personal items. Dr. Hyjin worked on her portable computer during the shuttle ride back to the human fleet your way. Fingers moved quickly across the keys as she sent critical data to human colonies and research stations across the galaxy. The information about the Outer Rim threat had to reach every human settlement before it was too late. The data contained everything she had learned about the danger that was coming. The alien species had refused to listen, but humanity would not abandon its people. The files included defense plans and evacuation routes, and instructions for fighting something that most people could not even imagine. Captain Wu Jin piloted the shuttle himself instead of using the automatic systems he needed to feel in control after the humiliation in the council chamber. His hands were steady on the controls, but his mind was already planning the military operations that would begin within hours. Back in the meeting hall, the alien delegates were still celebrating their victory over humanity. Chancellor Vorthak was telling jokes about human weakness to his staff. The other species were already making plans to divide human territory among themselves. The Valari wanted the human mining worlds that produced rare crystals. The hive minds were interested in human agricultural planets that could feed their growing population. The Trade Federation saw opportunities to take over human shipping routes and trading posts. But as the hours passed, strange reports began reaching the alien leaders. Human embassies on dozens of worlds were suddenly closing their doors. Human diplomats were packing up and leaving without giving any explanation. Human trade ships were canceling their contracts and returning to human space. The first alien leader to become worried was Prime Minister Ho of the Centauri Republic. His species had good relations with humans, and many human businesses operated in Centauri space. Suddenly, all the human companies were shutting down, and their workers were booking passage on the next ships to human worlds. The Galactic Trade Network began reporting massive disruptions. Human cargo ships that carried goods between alien worlds were abandoning their routes. Some ships dumped their cargo at the nearest space station and headed home. Others simply disappeared from tracking systems entirely. Scientific collaborations that had lasted for decades ended without warning. Human researchers working on joint projects with alien scientists packed up their equipment and left. Alien scientists found themselves locked out of research facilities that had been shared with humans for years. The neutral space station where the council meeting had taken place was now almost empty of humans. The human quarter that had housed thousands of workers and their families was completely abandoned. The only humans left were the cleaning crews who were removing the last of their people's belongings. Ambassador So Min stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching the evacuation proceed. The ship was much larger than the shuttle that had brought them from the station. It was designed for long voyages and had weapons that could destroy smaller vessels if necessary. The human fleet that had been hidden behind a nearby moon now moved into open space. There were more ships than the aliens. Had realized warships and cargo vessels and colony ships filled the darkness around the space station. The aliens watching from the station windows felt a chill of fear. Captain Wu Jin received reports from human commanders across the galaxy. Evacuation was proceeding faster than even the most optimistic predictions. Every human settlement had received the coded orders and was responding with military precision, but the humans were not just running away to safety. The fleet movements that alien observers could detect showed a strange pattern. Instead of retreating to the core human worlds, the ships were spreading out along the edge of the galaxy. Ancient human bases that had been empty for years were suddenly showing signs of activity. The alien species began to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been caught by surprise at all. This withdrawal was organized and planned. The humans had been preparing for this day for a long time. Dr. Hyejin transmitted the last of her research data to human science stations. The files contained detailed information about the threat from the outer rim and instructions for building weapons to fight it. The alien species had refused to listen to her. Warnings, but humanity would be ready. On alien worlds, human civilians were disappearing from their jobs and homes. They had received the same emergency messages telling them to return to human space immediately. Human children stopped attending alien schools. Human workers quit their jobs without giving notice. The aliens who had celebrated their victory over humanity now watched in growing alarm as every human in the galaxy seemed to vanish at the same time. It was like watching ghosts fade away. The humans were not fighting or protesting. They were simply leaving. Chancellor Vorthak received urgent reports from his military commanders. Human ships were moving through hegemony space, but they were not attacking anything. They were just collecting human citizens and heading toward the Galactic rim. The pattern made no sense to alien military minds. The cosmic elders finally spoke after remaining silent for so long. Their energy forms flickered with what might have been concern. They had lived through the rise and fall of many species, and they recognized the signs of something important happening. The last human shuttle left the neutral space station carrying the final group of human workers. The aliens who remained felt suddenly alone in the vast structure. The human quarters were dark and empty. The human shops were closed. The human voices were gone. In the silence that followed, the alien delegates began to receive new reports from their homeworlds. The outer rim colonies that they had ignored during the council meeting were sending distress calls. Something was attacking them, something that their weapons could not fight. The humans had tried to warn them, but they had not listened. Now the threat was spreading, and the only species that knew how to fight it had just walked away. The galaxy was about to learn the true cost of dismissing humanity. The first distress signal came from a Valari mining colony on the edge of known space. The message was broken and filled with static, but the words that could be understood were terrifying. The colonists spoke of darkness that ate light and shadows, that moved without bodies casting them. They screamed about their friends and family members simply disappearing into empty air. Chancellor Vorthak sat in his command center reading reports that made no sense. Hegemony border stations were going silent one by one. The last messages from each station described the same impossible things. Sensors that detected nothing but empty space where colonies used to be, rescue ships that arrived to find planets with no signs that anyone had ever lived there. The hive mind collective consciousness was experiencing something it had never felt before. Fear. Several of their outer colonies had simply vanished from the shared mental network. It was like having parts of their own mind suddenly cut away. The remaining hive minds could feel the empty spaces where their brothers and sisters used to be. Dr. Hyejin had tried to explain this threat to the Galactic Council, but they had refused to listen. Now she worked frantically in a secret human research station built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Her team had been studying the entity they called the Devourer for 3 years, ever since the first human colony had encountered it. The Devourer was not like anything the galaxy had ever seen before. It existed partially outside normal space and time, which made it almost impossible to detect with regular sensors. It fed on the thoughts and emotions of living beings, growing stronger with each mind it consumed. The more advanced and intelligent a species was, the more it enjoyed eating them. Human scouts had discovered the remains of dozens of dead civilizations in distant galaxies. Each one had been consumed by the Devourer until nothing remained but empty worlds and silent space. The entity moved from galaxy to galaxy like a plague, destroying all intelligent life. It encountered what made the Devourer truly terrifying was that it learned from everything it consumed. Each species it destroyed added their knowledge and abilities to its own power. It could use the technology of dead civilizations to build new forms of destruction. It understood the weaknesses of living minds because it had eaten so many of them. The human colonies that had gone silent were not destroyed. They were being studied. The Devourer was learning about this galaxy and its inhabitants by experimenting on human settlements. It wanted to understand how to consume entire star systems efficiently before beginning its real attack. Captain Wu Jin stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the tactical displays that showed the Devourer advancing across the galaxy. His fleet was positioned not to defend human territory, but to contain something that threatened all life. The humans had been preparing for this war, while the aliens argued about politics. The human military had spent 3 years developing weapons that could fight trans-dimensional enemies. Regular energy beams and missiles were useless against something that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Human scientists had created reality stabilizers that could force the Devourer into normal space where it could be hurt. Human colonies were being evacuated not to safety, but to predetermined battle positions. Every human settlement was being converted into a fortress equipped with experimental weapons. The species that had called humanity weak were about to see what humans could do when they prepared for total war. The cosmic elders manifested their energy forms in front of Ambassador So-Min at a secret human facility. These ancient beings had existed since the galaxy was young, and they had seen the Devourer before in other galaxies. They knew what it represented, and they were afraid. So-Min's response was calm, but frightening. Humanity had not only discovered the Devourer, but had been tracking its movement across multiple galaxies for decades. Human deep space exploration had found the corpses of countless civilizations that had been consumed by the entity. Unlike the current galactic species, humans had learned from those ancient failures. They had studied the remains of dead worlds and analyzed the patterns of destruction. They knew the Devourer weaknesses and had developed strategies to exploit them. The aliens began intercepting human military communications and discovered the true scope of human preparations. Humanity had been secretly building weapon systems that used principles beyond current galactic science. They had ships that could fight in twisted space-time and soldiers trained to resist mental consumption. Human deep space stations that aliens thought were research facilities were actually military bases. Human exploration ships that seemed to be looking for new worlds were actually mapping the Devourer advance route. Human scientists who worked with alien researchers were actually gathering intelligence about galactic defenses. The hegemony military tried to contact human forces to demand explanations, but received only automated responses. Human space was now completely closed to alien ships. Any vessel that approached human territory was warned once, and then destroyed, if it did not leave immediately. The Valari attempted to use their crystal technology to contact human minds directly, but found that human thoughts were now shielded by some kind of mental protection. The humans had developed ways to block psychic attacks, including the kind that the Devourer used to consume minds. Reports reached the Galactic Council about massive construction projects in human space. Entire star systems were being converted into weapon platforms. Human industrial capacity that aliens had underestimated was now operating at maximum production, building tools of war that no one had ever seen. Before the Devourer reached the Middle Rim systems and began consuming major alien worlds, the Centauri Republic lost 3 colonies in a single day. The Trade Federation watched their most profitable trading posts simply vanish from existence. The hive minds felt more pieces of their collective consciousness disappear. Panic spread through alien governments as they realized the scale of the threat they faced. Traditional weapons were completely useless against an enemy that could exist in multiple dimensions. Evacuation was impossible because the Devourer could consume entire star systems faster than ships could escape. Chancellor Vorthak finally swallowed his pride and sent a formal request to human leadership asking for assistance. The response came from Ambassador So-Min, and it was brief. Humanity had offered to share information about the threat, but the Galactic Council had refused to listen. Now it was too late for cooperation. The message explained that human strategy required specific preparations that took years to complete. The alien species had wasted that time arguing about territory and politics, while the Devourer advanced. Now they would face the consequences of their arrogance and short-sighted thinking, but the message also contained a small hope. Humanity was still willing to fight for the galaxy, but only on human terms. The old power structures that had dismissed human warnings were finished. A new form of cooperation would be needed if anyone was going to survive. The alien species who had celebrated their victory over humanity now faced a choice: submit to human leadership and follow human strategy, or face the Devourer alone with weapons that could not hurt it. The galaxy would soon learn whether pride was more important than survival. The Devourer continued its advance toward the core systems. The aliens finally understood why humans had walked away from the negotiating table. They were not abandoning civilization. They were preparing to save it with or without alien cooperation. The species that had called humans weak were about to discover their own weakness. The Devourer reached the inner systems faster than anyone except the humans had predicted. Entire star systems simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, but consumed into something that sensors could not detect. The hegemony mighty war fleets fired their most powerful weapons into empty space where their colonies had stood moments before, hitting nothing and achieving nothing. Refugee ships from dozens of species fled toward the galactic core, carrying desperate populations away from the advancing nightmare. The ships were packed with families who had lost everything. Parents held crying children who asked why their homes had disappeared. Elderly beings who had lived for centuries wept as they watched their civilizations vanish. The Galactic Council emergency session turned into chaos as representatives received real-time reports of worlds being erased from existence. Some species still blamed humans for bringing this catastrophe to their galaxy. Others begged for human assistance. They had previously scorned Chancellor Vorthak, stood before the assembled delegates, his reptilian features showing fear for the first time in his long life. The hegemony most powerful military force had proven completely useless against the Devourer. His weapons could not hurt an enemy that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The Valari crystals had lost their bright colors and now appeared dull and gray. Their mining colonies that had produced beautiful gems for thousands of years were gone forever. The crystal beings who had once sparkled with confidence now huddled together in terror. The hive mind's collective consciousness was breaking apart as more colonies disappeared. Each loss felt like having part of their brain cut away. The remaining insects clicked their mandibles in distress as they felt their species dying piece by piece. Captain Wu Jin forces engaged. The Devourer, at the Battle of Kepler Edge, the first successful resistance the entity had encountered in its consumption of the galaxy. Human ships equipped with reality-stabilizing generators and trans-dimensional weapons managed to halt the creature advance for the first time. The battle was unlike anything ever seen in galactic history. Human vessels fired weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The Devourer struck back with the combined technology of hundreds of dead civilizations, but the humans had prepared for this moment. The cost was enormous. Entire human fleets sacrificed themselves to buy time for civilian evacuations. Human captains rammed their ships into parts of the Devourer that existed in normal space. Brave human soldiers volunteered for suicide missions to plant reality bombs in the entity core. The battle revealed the Devourer, true nature to the watching galaxy. It was not a single creature but a collective of consumed civilizations, their knowledge and technology twisted into something that existed across multiple dimensional planes. Every species it absorbed made it stronger and more adaptable. The humans were fighting not just for survival but to prevent their own capabilities from being turned against the remaining free worlds. If the Devourer consumed humanity, it would gain access to human strategic thinking and military technology. That combination would make it unstoppable. Dr. Hai Jin research teams working from heavily shielded facilities made a breakthrough discovery. The Devourer could be wounded by targeting the quantum foundations of its trans-dimensional existence. But the weapons required would need the combined psychic energy of billions of sentient beings. The plan required unprecedented cooperation between all galactic species, something that had never been achieved in recorded history. The weapon would need components that could only be built by specific species. Each race had unique abilities that were essential to the Project Ambassador. So Min emerged from her secure facility to address the galaxy directly, bypassing the failed Galactic Council entirely. Her message was broadcast on every frequency to every species simultaneously. Her words carried the weight of extinction itself. Her speech was simple but powerful. Humanity had discovered how to fight the Devourer, but they could not do it alone. Every species would need to contribute their unique capabilities to a combined defense. The Valari crystal matrix could channel psychic energy. The hive minds could provide collective consciousness coordination, the hegemony industrial capacity could build the required infrastructure. The Trade Federation shipping network could transport components between systems. The Cosmic Elders' ancient knowledge could guide the weapon construction. Even the smallest species had abilities that were needed. The response was immediate, and desperate species that had warred for millennia suddenly cooperated to construct the massive weapon systems needed to wound the Devourer. Ancient enemies shared technology and resources. With urgency born of ultimate necessity, the humans provided the blueprints and coordination their leadership accepted without question. For the first time in galactic history, human engineers worked alongside alien technicians they had never seen, before Valari artists created psychic focusing crystals. While hive mind drones assembled quantum processors, construction proceeded at impossible speed across multiple star systems. The weapon required components that could only be built by specific species, forcing absolute cooperation. Beings who had never trusted each other now worked together, knowing that failure meant extinction for everyone. The hegemony factories that had once built weapons of conquest now produced parts for galactic defense. The Trade Federation merchant ships carried supplies instead of luxury goods. The Cosmic Elders shared secrets they had guarded for millions of years. Human tactical coordination guided the complex construction process Captain Wu Jin established. Command centers throughout the galaxy, where human officers worked with alien specialists to ensure every component was built correctly. The margin for error was 0 A's. The Devourer continued its advance, consuming the outer defensive lines. The United Galaxy prepared for a final confrontation. The weapon was nearly complete, but the Devourer was adapting to human tactics. Each battle taught it new ways to counter human technology. The entity had consumed enough civilizations to understand cooperation, and it began targeting the weapon construction sites. Human defenders fought desperate battles to protect alien factories, while alien forces died defending human research stations. Children from dozens of species played together in refugee camps while their parents worked to build the galaxy. Salvation old hatreds were forgotten in the face of universal extinction. The threat had accomplished what thousands of years of diplomacy could not. The weapon reached completion just as the Devourer approached the most populated core systems. The device spanned 3 star systems and required the combined psychic energy of trillions of beings. It represented the ultimate cooperation between species that had never trusted each other. Captain Wu Jin took command of the final battle from humanity. Most advanced warship positioned at the weapon focal point. Around him, vessels from every galactic species formed defensive lines, their crews knowing they faced either victory or complete extinction. The aliens who had once dismissed humans as weak newcomers now followed human orders without question. The species that had refused to listen to human warnings now depended on human strategy for their survival. The galaxy had learned the cost of arrogance as the weapon prepared to fire. The Devourer seemed to sense the danger. It began its final assault on the core systems, moving faster than ever before. The race between construction and consumption would determine the fate of all sentient life in the galaxy. The humans who had been forced to abandon the negotiating table now stood as the galaxy's only hope. Their advanced preparation and unflinching determination were the thin line between civilization and oblivion. The final battle would prove whether cooperation could triumph over extinction. The final weapon was completed just as the Devourer reached the galaxy's most populated core systems. The device spanned 3 star systems and required the combined psychic energy of trillions of beings. It represented the ultimate cooperation between species that had never trusted each other before this moment. Human tactical coordination guided the complex firing sequence, while alien specialists managed their species' unique contributions. The Valari focused their crystal matrix technology to channel pure psychic energy. The hive minds synchronized their collective consciousness to provide mental stability. The Cosmic Elders contributed their ancient knowledge of dimensional physics, while the hegemony provided the massive industrial infrastructure needed to power the weapon. The Trade Federation ships formed supply lines that kept every component functioning properly. Captain Wu Jin commanded the final battle from humanity. Most advanced warship positioned at the weapon focal Point. The bridge was filled with officers from every species working together for the first time in galactic history. Human tactical displays showed information provided by alien sensors. Around his flagship vessels from every galactic species formed defensive lines. Their crews knew they faced either victory or complete extinction. The Devourer had grown massive from its consumption, its form now visible as a dark storm that covered multiple star systems. The entity had learned from every civilization. It consumed and now possessed the combined knowledge of hundreds of dead races. It struck first using weapons and tactics from across the universe. Energy beams that could destroy planets fired at the defensive fleet. Human ships equipped with reality stabilizers moved to intercept the attacks. The stabilizers forced the Devourer energy weapons back into normal space where they could be deflected by conventional shields. The human technology that aliens had once mocked now saved their lives. The weapon fired in a cascade of energy that rewrote local space-time targeting. The Devourer transdimensional anchors. The psychic energy from trillions of minds focused through alien technology created a beam that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously. The Devourer fought back with everything it had learned from consuming countless civilizations. It used Valari crystal technology to amplify its own psychic attacks. It employed hegemony military tactics to coordinate its dimensional strikes. It even tried to copy human strategic thinking. The battle raged across dimensions with reality itself becoming the battlefield ships that existed in normal space. Suddenly found themselves fighting in twisted dimensions where the laws of physics worked differently. Some vessels aged centuries in seconds while others became frozen in time. Dr. Hai Jin monitored the weapon effects from the control center watching as the Devourer structure began to destabilize. Her research had been correct. The entity could be wounded by targeting its quantum foundations, but the damage was spreading in ways she had not predicted. The Devourer death throes were catastrophic, threatening to tear apart local space. The entity's final scream of rage created dimensional rifts that could have destroyed entire star systems. The fabric of space-time began to unravel as the creature died. The humans made their final sacrifice using their ships as quantum stabilizers to contain the destruction. Captain Wu Jin ordered every human vessel to ram the dimensional rifts even though it meant certain death for their crews. The alternative was the destruction of the entire galaxy. Thousands of human ships were lost as they channeled the weapon overflow, preventing the galaxy destruction. Human captains sent final messages to their families before flying their vessels into tears in space-time. Their sacrifice saved billions of alien lives. The Devourer defeat came at tremendous cost. Entire human fleets had been sacrificed. Worlds had been consumed before the final victory. The galaxy population was reduced by billions, but sentient life survived, saved by the species others had dismissed as insignificant newcomers. In the aftermath, the surviving species looked upon humanity with a mixture of gratitude, respect, and fear. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded every other species combined. Their strategic planning, technological advancement, and willingness to sacrifice everything had saved the galaxy. But the aliens also realized that humans had shown they could operate independently of galactic civilization when necessary. The species that had forced humanity to abandon the negotiating table now understood they had made a terrible mistake, Ambassador. So Min addressed the reformed Galactic Council from the podium where she had once been dismissed. Her speech was brief and to the point. Humanity would rejoin galactic civilization, but as equals, not supplicants. The old power structures were finished forever. She explained that the galaxy had been saved by cooperation, not domination. The weapon could never have been built without every species contributing their unique abilities, but that cooperation had only been possible under human leadership, because humans understood the true nature of the threat. The aliens who had mocked human emotions now understood that those same emotions had saved them all. Human determination had driven the 3-year preparation. Human sacrifice had powered the final victory. Human loyalty had held the alliance together when everything seemed hopeless. The Reformed Council voted unanimously to restructure galactic civilization with humanity as a founding partner rather than a junior member. The species that had once dismissed human capabilities now competed to offer favorable trade agreements and military alliances. Captain Wu Jin returned to human space to oversee the rebuilding of their military forces. The war against the Devourer had revealed other threats in the cosmic darkness. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared or dismissed by those they sought to protect. The human fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its former size, but the surviving ships were equipped with technology that made them the most powerful force in the galaxy. The aliens had learned that underestimating humans was a potentially fatal mistake. Dr. Hai Jin continued her research into trans-dimensional threats now supported by resources from every surviving species. Her work had saved the galaxy once and might be needed again. The universe was vast and full of dangers that conventional science could not understand. The research stations that had once been human-only facilities now hosted scientists from dozens of species working together to develop defenses against future threats. The cooperation born from desperation had become a permanent feature of galactic civilization. Human colonies began rebuilding with help from alien species who were eager to make amends for their past dismissiveness. The Valari provided crystal technology for human cities. The hive minds shared agricultural techniques to help feed human populations. The hegemony offered to build new human ships using their industrial capacity, while the Trade Federation gave humans favorable trading status. The cosmic elders shared ancient knowledge that helped humans understand their role in the galaxy, but the humans had learned their own lessons from the crisis. They maintained their independent military forces and continued developing advanced weapons. The galaxy had been saved through cooperation, but humans would never again depend entirely on alien goodwill. The memorial stations built to honor the human sacrifice became pilgrimage sites for beings from across the galaxy. Young aliens learned about the species that had saved them all. Children who had been born after the war grew up, knowing that humanity had given everything to protect the galaxy. The story of the Galactic Council meeting where humans had been dismissed became a cautionary tale told throughout the galaxy. Political leaders learned that dismissing any species' contributions could lead to catastrophic consequences. Ambassador. So men established the new diplomatic protocols that governed interactions between species. The rules emphasized respect for all civilizations, regardless of age or apparent power. The galaxy had learned that wisdom could come from unexpected sources. Years passed and the galaxy prospered under the new cooperative system. Trade flourished between species that had once been enemies. Scientific discoveries accelerated as different civilizations shared their knowledge. Military alliances protected against threats from beyond the galaxy. But everyone remembered the dark time when the Devourer had nearly consumed all life. The empty systems where colonies had once thrived served as monuments to the cost of arrogance and the value of cooperation. The galaxy no longer watched humanity in terror. Instead, they watched with profound respect as humans took their rightful place among the stars. The species that had abandoned the negotiating table had proven their worth through sacrifice and had earned their position through blood. The universe remained vast and dangerous, but the galaxy was no longer divided by petty rivalries and ancient prejudices. The cooperation that had been born from necessity had become the foundation of a new age where all species stood together against the darkness, and in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal vigilance, protecting a galaxy that had once dismissed them, watching for threats that might emerge from the cosmic void, ready to sacrifice everything once again if necessary to protect the civilization they had helped to save.